you for joining us. My name is Rich Longo, and I'll be your host for another Flycast Partners webinar. Today's webinar presentation takes the guesswork out of your batch processing, presented by none other than Joey Robichaud. Joey is a software consultant at BMC Software, and Joey has been in the IT industry for almost 4 decades. Been in for a long time, and he's worked extensively in pre- and post-sales implementations, mainly with Fortune 1000 clients. Joey has focused on corporate enterprise applications and implementations, mainly with Fortune 1000 clients. He's focused on these applications, workload automation, application lifecycle management, testing and monitoring, including end-user experience, quality assurance, server monitoring, network monitoring, load and functional testing, Java application, performance, requirements, and change management, testing management, triage, and troubleshooting. That's a lot. I think he knows what he's doing at this point. Before we get started, Joey, let me introduce our organization here. Flycast Partners is here to deliver a seriously amazing IT experience. Founded and staffed by personnel that have many years of experience in the IT space, we took the best from these collective experiences and added the best components necessary to grow and become a leading value-added reseller in the North American IT market. We offer best-in-class and implementation services and training in ITSM, ITAM, and workload automation spaces using ITIL best practices. Our professional services can easily scale up or down in order to meet the IT needs of any customer, regardless of size, complexity, or budgetary restrictions. We offer implementation services both on-site and remote, as well as training to reinforce your company's long-term IT success. Our ongoing administration and support service offerings will enable your organization to focus on your normal day-to-day operations, saving you both time and money. Please take some time to visit our website and at www.flycastpartners.com, or feel free to call us directly at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. We encourage you to utilize our website for researching those industry white papers, checking out the training that is available from ITIL to ITSM tools, assistance with your professional services, or even utilizing our free ITSM solution finder. We will take your questions during today's presentation. Please take time today to type your questions in the Q&A section provided in this WebEx. We will try to answer them throughout the presentation and at the end of the presentation for as long as our 45 minutes that we can get in everything in that time period. So simply type the question in. I'll read it off to Joey, and he'll try and answer as many as he can. Now, without further ado, Joey, I think I'm going to turn this show over to you and let you run with it. So here is the screen, sir.
All righty, sounds great. I've got the ball. I am trying to share my screen, and I think I got it there. Can y'all see that okay? Fantastic.
Looks good, sir.
All righty, let me kick things off here. And let me tell you first off, what I'm going to do today, I've got a short slideshow we're going to go through, and then I'm going to jump into the Control-M product itself, and we'll play with it a little bit. And I'd like you to just get a feel for how easy it is to use the product. Now, I have a little caveat here. This is a new slideshow. I mean, it's not the one I used to use. So I think this is going to be a little bit more complete, and Control-M has just evolved so much that we had to add some more stuff in the slideshow. So I think this will work out pretty good. So let me go ahead and kick things off. And when people think about Control-M or talk about it, particularly if they don't know a whole lot about it, they just hear the word, what does it do? What does Control-M do? They might hear somebody say, oh, it's a job scheduler. It does job scheduling. Well, as we're going to see, that's not quite the truth. It does a lot more than job scheduling. It does something we call workload automation, but that's not a bad way to start off thinking about it. So if you're thinking about job scheduling, there are certain people who are involved in it, who have a stake in what's going on. And those are folks like administrators and schedulers, operators, app support people, developers, and business users, okay? And depending on which kind of hat you're wearing, you may use different tools. So your app people may use, if they're doing PeopleSoft or they may use the PeopleSoft scheduler. If you've got DBAs, they may be using the DBA tools. If you've got sysadmins, they may be using things like cron or Windows Task Scheduler, so on like that, a lot of different tools. Well, to start off with, not typically the business users don't get a big say-so in the scheduling. You know, they can ask, this is what I'd like you to do, but they don't get a chance to do their own scheduling. Developers, they may do their own scheduling, but you know, rather than using cron, a lot of times I find that developers write their own little scheduling systems, or they may be using a cron or a task scheduler. What happens when you have a number of different people from different silos using a number of different tools? Your environment looks something like this. It's just a hodgepodge of tools and dashboards and viewing things, and it's almost impossible to say what's running right now. Because to answer that, you got to go to a lot of different places and use a lot of different tools and query a lot of different systems to find out what's happening. And it's even more difficult to find out, well, what's important that's happening right now. That's buried in all this mishmash of stuff. And you still have the developers and the users who are saying, well, you know, I'd like to play too. I'd like to be involved. What Control-M does for you is we're going to take this thing, and to start off with, we're going to make everybody equal. Developers, business users, everybody can use Control-M. It's a tool, that enterprise-wide tool that works for everyone. Okay, oops, hit the wrong thing here. So you don't have a hodgepodge of different tools. You have one tool, enterprise-wide tool that everybody's using. This gives you a lot of different advantages. Since everybody's using the same tool, the scheduling capability is greatly advanced. Since you have one place to go to see everything that's happening, you actually can get a real service level management system going. Control-M can help you with cloud computing and virtualization. Ran into something the other day where the particular user, every now and then, they had a great demand for computing resources. So they were greatly overcommitted. They had all kinds of machines that were very lightly used because every now and then they had to hit them very heavy. Well, okay, cloud computing, that's what that's for. Go ahead and just use what you need. You know, configure for what you need. If the load ever gets greater, let Control-M spin up your cloud machines for you and move the load there for you, so you don't have to overcommit, overconfigure, which means you're throwing dollars away at nothing. Okay. Since we're seeing everything that's going, we can handle your business intelligence, we can handle your database stuff, your big data stuff. We're going to talk about big data a little bit later. No matter what type of thing you need to do in your enterprise for your workflow, Control-M can handle that, including file transfers and ERPs like SAP or Oracle and things like that. Okay, so I say it's an enterprise thing. Everybody can see what's happening. That means you can monitor. We have a dashboard you can go to and see everything that's happening in the entire enterprise. We can see the dependencies on jobs. We can schedule things cross-platforms, cross-applications. So I might have a job that's waiting for a file to come in. When it sees that file on machine A, it's going to kick off a file transfer job on machine B. When that's finished, it's going to kick off some ETL jobs on machines C and D. When those finish, they're going to kick off database jobs on machines E, F, and G. These can all be, you know, Windows jobs, Windows machines, AS400 machines, Linux machines, Unix. We don't care. They can even be mainframes. Okay? We can mix and match application types and machine types within Control-M. Okay? Since we're watching what's happening today, we're monitoring everything. That means we watched what happened yesterday and the day before that, so on like that. So we know the history of what your workflow looks like. So if you ever do need to ask, what happened last week? What happened 2 weeks ago? What happened last year? We can show you that information. Okay? Knowing that information, we can do some pretty neat things. One of them is forecasting. So you can play some what-if games. You can say, well, what if this happens, and what if that happens, but everything else remains the same? It performs like it normally does. Well, what does that mean? What is performing like it normally does? You don't have to tell us. Control-M already knows because we watch that job run every day. So we know how it normally runs. We can plug that into the forecasting and say, well, all this remains the same. Let's vary these couple of conditions. What's going to happen to your deadlines? Are you going to meet your service levels or not? You can find that out ahead of time instead of finding out the hard way. Building your workflow is very easy. It's a drag and drop type thing. We're going to do some of that a little bit later, and you'll be able to get a feel for what's involved doing that. In fact, it's so easy that, you know, we even feel that business users can be become very competent at building workflows. In order to be able to manage and configure your entire infrastructure, we have a special administration tool that's typically used just by your administrators. We've actually revamped this tool in the latest iteration of a Control-M to make it very, very easy to use, very easy to configure and set up your overall Control-M implementation. Finally, we have something we call self-service. Self-service is something where the users themselves don't actually have to have Control-M loaded on their machines in order to get in there and find out something. They can go to a browser, bring up a browser, go to a URL, and they'll be able to see their jobs. They'll be able to see their file transfers. They'll be able to see the status of things. They'll be able to order jobs themselves. We'll have a catalog to find out there. Instead of having to call an operator and saying, hey, can you run this job for me? They can do that themselves. They can submit that themselves. We call it self-service because, yeah, you can get to it from a browser, but you can also get to it from your cell phone or your iPad. So no matter where you are, no matter when you are, your users, your stakeholders can have input and see what's happening in the workflow that they care about. Now, this is something we have with Control-M. It's something called Workload Change Manager. And I love this because I came from the development world. And in the development world, okay, yeah, we know how to code and stuff like that, but somebody has to tell us what they want to do. Typically, users are going to start telling us what they want to do. They'll write specs. We look at those specs and we write code, we send it to the users, and they say, well, this isn't really what we want. What about this here and what about there? So we write some more stuff, send it back to the users, and they say, well, yeah, this is what I said, but it's not really what I meant. And you go through this iterative process that we all have seen so much in IT. It's slow, it's chaotic. Every now and then something gets through, something gets approved. It's just inefficient. It's a mess. It's difficult to do things. This world changes quickly, particularly in workflow. Everybody needs to be agile. They need to be fast-paced. Okay, this typical iterative development process does not really work in a workflow environment. People have come up with agile development to assist in application development. We've got the same thing in workload development. We have something called Workload Change Manager. And it's a tool that everybody can use to define workflows. So the idea is that rather than writing specs, let your business users go ahead and define the workflow. We give them a browser-based application. They can go and use tools very similar to what the developers would be using if they were creating workflows. Users develop workflows, so there's no confusion about what do you really mean here? What do you intend to do here? We can enforce site standards, so that when the operators see the end result, hey, this looks the way I expect it to look like. When the support people look at it, they say, oh, you've got the documentation attached, because we can enforce that. We can require that documentation be attached to workflow. So everybody's now speaking the same language. Things that may have taken weeks before can now be done in hours, okay, as far as creating new workflow. When it comes to promote things, this is something that always used to bug me as a developer. I'm in a test environment. I test my applications. I go against test databases. I use test data. Everything looks good. I'm now ready to move it to production. The first thing I have to do is change it. So I have to go in and alter the application to use prod databases and use prod servers and use prod data. Well, I've just changed it. I've changed a tested application. It's now untested, and I'm moving it to production. That just scares the heck out of me. We have an automated promotion facility within Workload Change Manager. We'll automatically make those type of modifications for you so they can be made safely and securely in a secure manner in which that you know that they're going to be correct once those promotion modifications are made. We have something called Batch Impact Manager in Control-M. And this is something that is widely used. People monitor things in terms of services. Okay, have I met my service level agreements or not? Well, what's a service? How do you define that? Well, in this case, we've got a bunch of jobs that are all defined in Control-M, and our most important job has to finish at 6:30 in the morning. So we're running jobs here. We might have something kick off. It runs a little while. It completes. It fires off some other jobs. They're running. They complete. Oh, and we got a failure. Something failed. So we might get an alert issued. Maybe an operator sees something. Maybe we create a trouble ticket. Make a phone call. We wake up somebody. They work on the issue. Okay. A little while later, we're going along. Maybe something else fails. Okay. Well, we go through the same process. We wake people up, get them involved in it. Okay. And this is the typical firefighting situation that many IT operations find themselves in. The question you want to ask is, how important are these things that failed? Okay. Maybe they're not that important. Maybe it's something I deal with later. Okay. With Control-M, with Batch Impact Manager, we point to our most important process, which is this job at the end that has to finish at 6:30. Okay? We'll look at that important process and we'll plot the backflow to determine what the critical path is. Okay? So these jobs that we're flagging right there, those are the ones that must complete in a timely manner in order for us to hit our deadlines. Okay? So Control M is going to pay special attention to those jobs. Okay? So as we're running things, we might be running some stuff and job's finished, they go on to the next one, something fails. Okay? This job that failed is not on the critical path. It's not flagged. So Control M may issue an alert, may issue a trouble ticket, but it's not going to say this is endangers you missing your deadline. Okay? However, we have another job that's running and it fails. Might fail at 2:30 in the morning. So we'll alert you at 2:30 in the morning and say, hey, because of this job failing, you may miss your deadline. You haven't missed it yet. You still got 4 hours, but unless you want to pay special attention to this, we need to get somebody involved. Well, who are we going to get involved? Everybody's available because we didn't wake them up on things that were not important. Okay, so this shows you your critical jobs, the one that you need to concentrate on. If you want to try to use some type of a continuous improvement process, these are the jobs we're going to look at to see if we can improve them and smooth them out and make them more secure, make them run better, make them run more quickly. These are the ones we want to pay attention to. This gives you a tool, a methodology in which you can improve your overall process. File transfers are a huge thing in workflows. I think something like 95% of our customers use file transfers of some manner. We've recently revamped our file transfer capability. We do support all of the standard transfer mechanisms and encryptions and certificates and all of that. But what we've done with our newest version is we've added an additional dashboard so that you can very easily go into our GUI and say, what's the status of my files? Have these files arrived yet or not? I need to look for this particular file. What's the status as it come? What's my transfer rate? What are my most heaviest used servers? Things that you want to know from a file transfer viewpoint, we're now giving you access to that information in a very easy manner. You can also get to the same information from our self-service mobile mechanism as well. Let's talk a little about Control M for Cloud. And this is kind of what I was talking about. We schedule workflow and we use up some resources. So we schedule some more workflow, we use up some more computer resources, and this just continues. And eventually we're pretty maxed out on machine resources. We go to schedule something else and we can't. The machines can't handle it. What Control M for Cloud does is we'll go ahead and spin up cloud images for you as you need them, whether they're on the Amazon cloud, whether they're your own VMware images, whether you're using Blade Logic, and I think we've got Azure in there now as well. So, okay, we need to run more jobs, more resources. We don't have resources available to it. Control M can automatically spin up your cloud images and transfer that workload to those cloud images. So we only pay for the resources that we actually need at the time that we need them. Self-service, it mentioned it's a remote access device. So either from a browser, from an iPhone or an Android device or an iPad, people can get into Control M and see their information. Now, when they come in, you have to authenticate yourself. At that point, we can pre-apply some filters and permissions. So users may come in, but they are only able to see the services and that they're associated with, and can only perform the actions that they've been given permission to. So a typical user, I might say, well, you're in accounting, I'm going to let you see all the accounting workflow. But you can't cancel anything, you can't rerun anything. You can just look at the workflow and look at the output. Okay. Someone who's a little more technical, say I've got a DBA, I might say, okay, you can come in, you can see everything, and furthermore, I'll let you kill jobs and restart jobs and rerun jobs and maybe even make changes to them. I might have certain people, this is something that you see a lot. You'll run a workflow, and at some point, everything stops because there's a sanity check involved. Somebody has to look at the output and say, yeah, these numbers balance, it's okay to continue. And typically that means somebody's got to look at a report, then they have to call some operators, and the operator's at lunch, and the guy has, and it's just it's a time-wasting opportunity. With self-service, they can go in there, look at their workflow, they can look at the output in self-service, so they don't have to wait for reports to get emailed or printed. They'll see the information, they can say, okay, I want to continue. They click a button and say, I confirm that it's okay to continue. So using their mobile device, they can go ahead and direct the activity of the workflow. We might even say something like, you know what, they don't balance. And because they don't balance, I can't continue yet. I need to run another program. I need to run some more workflow. Instead of having to call operators to schedule that, we can give them the ability to do that from self-service. They can go to a catalog that's predefined, select the workflow they want to run, enter in whatever parameters are necessary for that workload, run the workflow, look at the results. If they look good, then they go ahead and confirm to continue at that point. So no matter when you are, no matter where you are, your stakeholders, your important stakeholders, have access to this information. And by the way, since this is filtered, when people go ahead and authenticate yourself, you can actually give this to your external users if you wanted to let them see their information, give them access to their information. Okay, big data. And by big data, we mean really big data. Okay, so this is your Hadoop processing. That if you don't have Hadoop process projects planned right now, I would bet that somebody in your organization is thinking about them very, very heavily. Okay, this is where everything's coming towards. Now, to give you an idea of what big means in big data, we're looking at a typical airline, okay, and the amount of data that's being collected. Okay, so just from the engines alone, okay, they're collecting, this is what, 200, I can't even say that number. This is, the 200 is terabytes, these are petabytes, these are terabytes, and I think these are zettabytes, something like that. This is every day, okay? Stuff like this is coming in. So massive amounts of data. The only way to handle that is with a big data operation using Hadoop. Now, as far as Hadoop is concerned, to control M, we've been doing it for years now. It's just another job to us. Okay, we have partners with all of the major Hadoop distributors, and you can create your Hadoop workflow within your regular workflow. Now, the thing about big data workflow is that it's not an island. It's not, okay, I just have these big data jobs I need to run. No, it doesn't work that way. Big data needs a lot of it. Okay, where's that data coming from? Well, a lot of it's coming from file transfers. A lot of it is coming from data capture organizations or implementations like Unity. They may be doing some screen scraping to collect information. You may be pulling things down from the internet. So just scads and scads of information coming in. Okay, that's not big data jobs. That's other types of jobs collecting that information. That information comes in, it needs to be processed, it needs to be filtered, it needs to be ironed out. So we have some type of transformation and load going on at that point. It's still not big data jobs. Once we've got that data in a form in which it's ready to give to big data, now we're going to run some big data jobs. And we may do some map reducing, we may run big data scripts. We're constantly adding to the type of jobs you can do within big data. In fact, big data has its own scheduler, something called Uzi. Uzi is okay, but it's really not an enterprise job scheduler because it does not do non-Hadoop jobs very well. So we used to say, okay, you can do all your Uzi work. You don't need Uzi, you can use Control M. But a lot of people already have an investment in Uzi. Well, we've already defined our jobs within Uzi. Well, okay, now we can schedule Uzi jobs within Control M. We'll just take what you have already and put it in a Control M workflow. Once you've run your big data and done your processing, done your queries, done your SQL type things, then you go to other non-big data applications. So the thing about Control M is that, yes, we do big data, but we also do everything else that's necessary in order to build a complete big data application. So you've got that all within one workflow, can see it all on one dashboard. Now, Control M has a lot of application support built into it coming right out of the box. But we don't do everything. There's just, every day there's more and more types of applications. So we cannot possibly, coming out of the box, have job types, have support for everything. But what we do have is something called Application Integrator. So if you have products that we don't have something out of the box to handle, it is incredibly easy using Application Integrator to create your own job types, to create your own integrations. You might even have your own custom job types, your own custom applications. We can pull those into Control M as Control M jobs. So this is very easy to do. And in fact, we also, out in our communities, we have what we call a Control M application hub. We encourage people, once they've created an application integration, to upload it to the hub. So if you need to build something, let's say you need to build Splunk integration, go check the hub. We've already got Splunk things out there that other people have built. Go grab it, download it, pull it in, use it for yourself. You might find something that it's not exactly what I need, but it's close. Well, go ahead and pull it down and modify it as you need to. See how other people did things. So Application Integrator comes with the product, incredibly easy to use. Okay. Now, this is something else new that we've added. You can handle a lot of jobs. So the heaviest load I've ever seen in Control M is 3 million jobs a day. Okay, that's a lot of data, and really, it's the textual output that's a lot. Okay, it's the logs, it's a standard out. That can get pretty sizing. Okay, now Control M can handle all that, but we found a better way to do that. We have something called Workload Archiving. What we'll do is we'll take the textual output, your standard out, your logs, which are generally in ASCII format. We'll take that, we'll compress it down. We'll put it in its own separate database so that we don't clog up the regular database with textual information. But then we'll do the joins for you. So if you need to see something, as far as you know, it's all coming from the same place. But behind the scenes, we're making joins between different databases. What this means is you can keep years and years and years worth of textual information about your jobs, the textual output, and access it as you need to. Okay. If audit and compliance is important to you, this can be a key thing because quite often there's some pretty sizable fines involved if you can't produce reports from 5 years ago or something like that. So Workload Archiving gives you that access. You go to the information just like you're going to any other current job, and we'll give you the information, the logs and the output. Now, you might imagine that if I'm giving you everything that you've ever done in the last 5 years, I may not be doing you a favor, okay, because that's just a whole lot of data. How am I going to handle that? How am I going to access it? We do give you the ability to search that data and to filter how you search that information. We can even search based on regular expressions and phrases and words and date ranges and things like that. So we make it very easy to get to the information that you do need when you do need it. Okay? And you can get to this information either from the control GUI or from self-service. Okay? So again, no matter where you are, no matter when you are, if you need to get to something, you'll be able to do that. You can also define the limits of what you want to keep. So you might have your certain types of processing. Hey, this is patient data. We need to keep that for 7 years. This is tax information. We need to keep that for 5 years. This over here is a student enrollment. We only need to keep that for 3 years. Everything else we need to keep for 6 months, except database stuff. We need to keep that for 10 years. Okay, we can define those things, and Control M will keep the appropriate information, the appropriate job types for the appropriate amount of times that we define. If you've already got something in place, if you're using cron or Task Scheduler, or maybe you've got one of our competitors and you want to use Control M, we'll go ahead and convert what you have already into Control M job definitions, so we can really speed the process of moving from one environment to the other environment if you're using Control M. In fact, we've run into some situations where people have had a competing product, and in order to go to the next version of their competing product, it was going to be more difficult than it would be to use our conversion tool and convert to Control M. Okay, and that thing is heavily used. So we're very proud of that, and we're constantly changing that because we're constantly adding new stuff to our conversion tool. So I have gone through all of the slides that I wanted to go through, and let's see, how am I doing time-wise? Okay, I did not eat up too much. Let me bounce out of this, and I'm going to check to see if there's any questions.
Definitely have some questions.
Okay,
so
good.
We'll start off with the first one. If it does not spin up a cloud server automatically, can a person spin up a cloud server from their mobile device? That's the first question.
You can indeed spin up a cloud server from your mobile device. That would be just, sorry, now you're talking about doing self-service. We could certainly run a job that would configure and start or create we could run a Control M job that would do that. So you could do it that way. Or if you just want to go to Amazon and spin up the device, you can do that as well. And by the way, we now have our entire Control M implementation defined out on Amazon. So you can go to Amazon and order a Control M complete implementation, as opposed to where am I? Here I am. As opposed to just find my thing here. As opposed to defining it yourself and continuing on. Okay, and I'm sorry. Was there another question there?
Yeah, another question. What methods can it accept big data?
by what methods can it accept big data. We're talking, we install on one of the node machines in a Hadoop environment, and we talk directly to Hadoop. We support the major, as far as I know, we support all of the Hadoop job types, Spark and Hive and Pig and Impala, and there's a Tahoe. Those constantly change because there's always something new coming in. Typically, we'll support the next whatever new thing in the next release of Control-M, which typically about every 3 months we issue an enhancement package.
Okay, and another question, CSV file import on job schedules.
CVS file import on job schedules. Would that be something we support in our conversion tool? I actually don't know that. I'd have to check and see if it's on the list. Now, Control-M jobs, when we define them, we save them in our Control-M database, but we can write them out as XML files. So if we have something that's not supported, it's very easy to pull in by just writing a script to convert it to XML, and we can import that into Control-M. And that's basically what our conversional utility does as it goes through the different types of things that we convert to Control-M.
Okay, and that's all the questions for this moment.
Okay, all righty. And if I have not answered the questions that anybody's asked, go ahead and please just re-chat that. And if you need to point it to a different direction, just please do so, and I'll go ahead and address that in a little bit. So I'm looking at the actual Control-M product right now. I'm actually running this on a virtual machine on my laptop. So it doesn't take a lot of horsepower to run a Control-M implementation. Control-M is set up as a 3-tier application. At the highest tier, we call it our Enterprise Manager. It's basically our master database of everything we know, along with the logic to maintain that. Underneath the Enterprise Manager, we have a Control-M server. That Control-M server talks to the Enterprise Manager, and it also talks to one or more Control-M agents. Now, the agents are the machines you have right now that are running your workflow. So the way the scheme works is that every day, at the beginning of the day, whatever you define as the beginning of the day, the servers wake up, the Control-M servers wake up. They go to the Enterprise Manager and say, hey, I'm responsible for these agent machines. What jobs do they need to run today? The Enterprise Manager collects that, gives it back to the server, who then goes to those individual agents and say, this is what you need to run, under these conditions. Y'all go ahead and go to it. I'm going to go back to sleep. Let me know if I need to do anything. Okay. So the agents pretty much continue to run themselves. It's just they get their marching orders from a different mechanism. And since everything underneath that Enterprise Manager, since we can see everything underneath that Enterprise Manager, it's very easy to scale up by adding more agents and more servers and to attain an enterprise-wide view of everything. Now, I said there's 3 tiers. They can actually all be on the same machine if you want to. Okay, that's typically how we do our demo systems. They're all in the same box. But you don't have to do it that way. A lot of people split them apart. So anyway, I'm in our GUI, our client machine, and this is actually a 4th part of our application. The client, the GUI, can be anywhere. Anywhere. It's got to be on a Windows box, but it could be on your laptop, on your own workstation. It talks to the Enterprise Manager. Okay, so I'm talking to the Enterprise Manager right now, and I might say, you know what, I want to define a new workflow. So I'm going to call up a blank workspace, and I'm going to grab a job type. And here's a number of job types. Most of these come with the product, but anything in here that has a U in front of it is something that one of our developers, one of our SCs built using an application integrator. And in fact, Docker and Teradata and Splunk and Clover ETL, those are also things that people built with our application integrator. But let me just grab an OS job type, which is an operating system type job, something you might create at a command line. And I was doing something a little while ago, and I changed the scale of my view. Let me put that back up again. Okay. So it popped a job up over here for me. Okay, what is that job going to do? Well, I need to tell it what I want the job to do. I might give it a meaningful name. This is an operating system type job, so it's basically something you do at a command line. So I can point to a script, I can type in a command, or I can do an embedded script which just says, I want to do it define it within a, let me put this host name, define it within Control-M. Here I'm going to tell it this is actually a batch file, and then I need to tell it where I want it to run. And I can run on individual machines or groups of machines that I may have defined. Okay, let me go ahead and grab that guy right there. What user do you want to run as? Because some users may have different rights and permissions, maybe different profiles. What application and sub-application do I want to use? And what those are is we're going to use those as filters. So I could say, oh, this is a big data job, and it is using billing information. Okay? So I can later come back and say, show me all the data jobs. Show me all the billing information jobs. Show me all the Eastern region jobs. Show me all of the accounting jobs. Just gives me an easy way to filter down to things that I care about. And these are required. Didn't used to be required, but people who didn't use this got themselves into a mess. So it's good to put that there. So I've defined what I wanted to run. And there's more definitions I could do here if I wanted to. This is just a start here. Now I'm going to tell it when I want to run. Well, I might want to run it every day. I'm going to tell it every day within certain months, month days, every weekday, certain weekdays within certain months. I might want to define some calendars. So I have a number of calendars defined. And so I've got like certain work days, holidays, paydays, and you can define the calendars with Control M. Let's see, I grabbed that one. I don't know what that means, so I can go ahead and view it. And so these are looking at just Mondays, it appears. Okay. So there may have been an easier way to do that. But I can use calendars based on your special days. If I care when it runs, I can enter a time frame in which it should run. If it's a cyclic job, something that runs over and over again, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, something like that, I can define that. The nice thing about cyclic jobs is that even though they may run hundreds of times a day, from a license viewpoint, they just count as one job. So I'll define what I want to do there. I'll go ahead and put this on none so I don't forget about it. Okay, and at this point, I've defined what I want it to run and when I want it to run. That's job scheduling. Okay, this is workload automation. What do you want to do after the job runs? Because a lot of things can happen when you run a job. It can fail. It can end not okay. It can end and we don't care if it's okay or not. It can end okay, successfully. It might end with a certain completion code. May have executed a certain number of times in a row or rerun a certain number of times in a row. Maybe it ran okay but didn't generate any output. It had been submitted yet. Maybe it's failed a certain number of times in a row, or maybe the output contains some word or phrase that we want to key on. Okay, so let's say I'm running a script that's running a SQL job. Well, that script, your SQL may fail. You got a syntax error in your SQL, but the job completes okay because your ISQL or your SQL Plus ran okay. So we might want to key on that. Hey, it did end okay, but it also had in the output it said error or syntax error or something like that. So whatever that might be, we can select that and then say, well, what do you want to do? Well, if it ends okay, we'll just go ahead and notify somebody. And since we can do multiples, we can then say okay and set it to okay. Or we might say I want to rerun the job. Or maybe I want to assign something to a variable. Or maybe I want to order another workflow to run when this happens. Okay. So let me give you an example. Suppose we're doing a file transfer. File transfer fails. Operator sees it fails. He calls you up and says, hey, your file transfer just failed. What do you want me to do? What do you think 99% of the time you're going to tell him to do? It's a file transfer. Go ahead and rerun the job. It might run the next time. So instead of getting the operator involved and getting people involved and taking some time, we'll go ahead and do that automatically. But what happens if the file transfer fails the second time? So what if we have the number of failures is 3? So we've tried to rerun it 3 times and it still failed. Well, maybe now we need to run another job that we keep in a directory somewhere, and maybe it's a directory full of utilities. And maybe we found that most of the time when rerunning the job fails, it's because some target directory is full. So we might have a workflow called clear out the target directory, and we'll go ahead and run that automatically if our rerun fails 3 times in a row. But we might also want to say, hey, but if it fails 4 times in a row, well, at this point, we're going to go ahead and notify somebody. Maybe we'll collect some diagnostics first, run a job to collect diagnostics, and then we'll email that to the developers involved. Okay. But what we've done is we pull the operators out of the loop. Instead of them having to get involved, we've taken and addressed issues automatically. So We like to say that workload automation saves you time, saves you money, because we do a lot of the work for you. This is where you want to try to get clever. If you can get clever here, you can really reduce the amount of people necessary to handle your typical, your rudimentary, your generic issues that you run into. Let Control M do that for you. Keep the people to do things that are more analytical based. Okay, you can reassign them, you can free them up, you can do whatever you want to, but we can save you a lot of money here once we start taking advantage of the workload automation aspect of Control M. Now I'm going to show you just one other thing real quick. I'm going to stick another job in here. Now this job I may have said I wanted to run on a particular machine. I've got it on this machine over here. This one, I'm going to tell it to run. Actually, I picked a bad job type. Let me get rid of that. Delete it, and I'll drop another job type. Drop it here. I want this guy to run on some Unix machine somewhere. Okay, and I want them dependent on each other. Okay, so that's it. I've created a dependency across platforms, across job types. I don't have to use semaphore files. I don't have to do any type of scripting wizardry to try to make that happen. I just draw an arrow. Okay, and as I build more and more complex workflows, I'm just repeating the same processes. I'm defining the type of job I want to run, and I'm showing what the dependencies are. I think I'd mentioned earlier we can make those dependencies dynamic if we need to, but this is all very, very easy stuff to do within Control M. Let me just take a quick look at some of the workflow that we have out in our demo system. Expand it all. And here we've got 477 jobs out there, and this is kind of what it looks like. I've got jobs crossing all types of machines. We've got some Linux jobs and some non-Linux jobs and file transfers, and they're all dependent on each other. Okay. Now, by the way, as your workflow increases, this can be a little bit of a curse. Yeah, I can see everything, but the problem is I can see everything. Okay, because there's a lot of stuff out there. We can assign filters to limit what you're looking at, but really what we would like to encourage people to do is, hey, forget about the job view. Look at it in terms of services, because services are what you really care about. Did I complete my workflows okay? Or here, I've got a job failure in my Hadoop workflow. I can drill into this and find out what's going on. I was talking to a user about a year ago who was running around 25,000 jobs a day. When they created services, when they grouped their workflow in terms of services, they only had 13 services that they cared about. It's so much easier to monitor 13 services than it is to monitor 25,000 jobs. Okay, and we still give you the same information. Like I said, you can drill into here and find out what in particular is going on in any workflow if you care to. If they finish okay, I don't need to see them. If they didn't finish okay, well, now I need to get in here and I need to find out what's going on, and we can get you that information. And again, we can get to this information from self-service as well. So the type of information you need to see is very easy to access. Let me just check a little bit. There are other things. We can look at history. I said we can look at things in the past. We can forecast and look at things in the future. What if? We can define what if scenarios. But this is basically using a Control M, defining what your workflow looks like, and then monitoring it after you've defined that workflow. Now, two more things. One, we have the training videos built into the product itself, so it's very easy to get people up to speed on Control M. This is actually how I learned Control M originally, just by going through these little videos. The other thing that I would like you to consider is I certainly don't expect anybody to remember a single thing I did up here. But did you get a feel for how difficult, how tricky it was for me to do these things? It's really very easy to use Control M. Pick, drag, drop, configure, and you're done. Okay. So this is a tool that is not only very powerful, but it's also very, very easy to use. And that's what we really want. We don't want to sell shelfware. We want to sell app products that people can use and will use. Part of our development tenets, you walk into a place and they have, oh, these are our goals, these are our vision, this is this typed up on the wall. Ours is, the very first one, is if it's not easy to use, go back and rewrite it. Okay. And we've done this to some of our products. We've said, hey, this is too difficult for users to use. Change it. Make it easy. Application integrator that I was talking about earlier, we've always had something you could do that with, but it was just a pain to use. It was very difficult, very confusing. We threw it out, came out with Application Integrator. It is incredibly easy, and people are actually making use of that now. the world is complex. People don't have time to sit and learn complex things. They need to be able to use easy things and become productive very quickly. And that's certainly something that you can do within Control-M. So, Rich, that's about the end of what I wanted to do here. I know I'm pressing the time limit. Is there any more questions we need to look at?
It doesn't appear we have any more questions at all. You've answered them all, and it's been a great presentation. I like the new presentation, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your time today, Joey. It's very much appreciated.
It's my pleasure.
All right, and all those of you that joined us, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. And any further questions, please, by all means, reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. Or you can simply email us at info@flycastpartners.com. That's info@flycastpartners.com. And until next time, enjoy the rest of your week, folks. Thank you.